Recording. Okay, so let's go back. So, as several of you all know, the Deke alumni, the way in which, well, alumni and chapters function within DKE National has changed drastically over the last decade. I always tell people that, DKE has gone from what used to be more of a congregational model where every chapter did whatever they wanted to a more nationalized and standardized model. I also tell people that the model for our chapters has gone from one that was more friendly to smaller chapters to one that is more difficult for small chapters like us. And so I just want to acknowledge that, Deke is changing a lot. And really, what I think Deke Nationals is trying to do is get us on par with other large national fraternities across the country. Um, and so that's what a lot of this standardization is coming out of. And so a lot of you all might not know that, the kind of model that Deke wants us to emulate moving forward, which Deke did some of this a couple of years ago. So Deke came in and helped form an alumni association that was separate from the housing corporation. And so, and even for me, I just found out about that about a couple of weeks ago from Deke Nationals and got the information about that. Um, so we actually do currently have two organizations with the state of Tennessee. We have an alumni association and we have a housing corporation. And that might be news to some of you all because for the longest time, the housing corporation has been the only thing that we've been managing. But Deke moving forward kind of wants us to have this three-part leadership model when it comes to alumni involvement with the chapter. There is going to be the first thing is an advisory board. And so the advisory board are alumni that assist and helps the chapter on day-to-day issues. If there are any issues between the university and the chapter, you all partied too hard, spring party, and the police had to be called in, then this group is the group that will be called to say, hey, can you work out the issues with the undergrads, right? And so any issues between the university and chapter, if they arise, this advisory board is the one that engages with the undergrads and helps coordinate solutions to whatever problems are being encountered. DKE has an alumni advisor training program. Heath and I were both on a call the other day on a training for that, and there's a we just did a one night session, but there's a full training session that they're wanting all of these alumni advisors to go through. Ideally, each chapter would have 3 to 5 alumni members that are a part of this advisory board. And particularly, we need alumni that are within 100 miles around the chapter. So, for instance, since I live in New York City, I would not be a great candidate to be an advisory board member for our chapter. But, Manhattan College, for instance, I could go be an advisory member there because I'm within 100 miles. This is, if you are within 100 miles of Sewanee, this might be a position to consider. Like I said, it does require training from nationals. But currently, Heath, you can speak you're the only one that's trained currently, right?
Yeah, as far as I know,
And are you designated for us or are you designated for center?
for both.
For both? Okay. Um, so basically, currently right now we only have one. It would be great, particularly because Heath, you're already at center. It would be great to have more alumni as advisors, particularly an advisor that's just kind of more dedicated to Sewanee. I'm not trying to kick you out, Heath. Um, but I know
Actually,
Heath,
I'm
you
trying
have a
to get
lot
people
going on
now.
at center. So, but if there are alumni that want to step up, that would be a great place to step into. Um, Another part of this leadership model that the Nationals wants us to adopt, which these next two we already have, we just really need to focus on defining their structures and getting officers in place for them. And so the first is the Alumni Association. The Alumni Association is tasked with the social aspects of organizing alums. So think of this as they're primarily concerned about the communications and the meetings that alumni have. So whether that be social things or business meetings, homecomings, barbecues, get-togethers, all those type of things, that's what the Alumni Association would do. And of course, as a non, all these nonprofit organizations that are registered with state, you need three officers, three designated officers. You need a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. Um, Housing Corps is our oldest institution. That is what we used to just have. Um, the Housing Corporation is tasked with managing the house and housing related issues. And so that includes repairs, renovations, all of those things should be brought into the Housing Corps or to the Housing Corps. One of the things that we've never done as a Housing Corps that we can now do, since we have a separate alumni association, is that we can register with the IRS to get exemption. Because now that it is a nonprofit housing corp, which it wasn't before, um, there's a complication there, but we can now register in that way, and that'll also help us with tax matters and also with brothers that want to donate larger sums of money and hopefully write those off on their taxes. That could become a possibility in the future. As I said, it's not a possibility right now because we've never fully enacted the separation of our alumni and housing in a way in which the IRS would be amicable to that. But hopefully, moving down the road, we can look at doing that. And of course, again, we need three officers for that. We need a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. Are there any questions just about this kind of, model leadership for the chapters and how these boards function or the ideas behind them? And you can just unmute yourself and just let me know any questions. Okay, I'm going to move on. So the road to standardization. So what we're going to need to do as a chapter is hopefully move along to finally getting to this many officers. And as you all know, who have been with Housing Corps for a long time, we've always had issues with maintaining officers for just the Housing Corps and maintaining continuity of leadership. And so here's a rough plan for this next year and the following year. and some ideas and some changes in the way that we function that can hopefully allow us to get those three fully functioning boards like our nationals wants us to do. One of the things that I'm proposing that we've never done before is bringing undergrads into leadership. And so, as I said, for corporations registered with Tennessee, the mandated offices are president, secretary, and treasurer. The vice president role, we've normally had vice presidents, but legally they're not. I'm sorry for anyone that has served as a vice president, but legally you're not that important. Um, and so, one of the ways in which we can get undergrads into leadership into our organizations and get that automatic feedback, because I believe one of the issues we've always had is that we have alumni that are disconnected from the undergrads themselves. And so one of the ways that I think that we can do this is that the president and vice president of the chapter, so the undergrad chapter, serve as vice presidents for the housing and the alumni corps. So, maybe the president wants to do the alumni corps, be the VP for it, and the vice president of the chapter wants to do the housing corps, or vice versa. They would figure that out and they would volunteer for those roles. And so, for the regular meetings, for the business of those meetings, they would be there, they would be present. And that way, when alumni officers are trying to make decisions, there's always an undergrad there. Um, and then a way in which we promote continuity of leadership is when these former presidents and vice presidents graduate. So when they're coming out of Sewanee, we ask them to serve as treasurers and secretaries coming out of school. And the overall idea for this for me is that that will ensure that 50% of our leadership has some connection with current undergrads. I think that's just been a major gap that we've always encountered is that as our housing corps has always developed a time period in which we no longer have connection with undergrad brothers, and then we see the undergrads try to reach out, and it oftentimes fails. But this way, if they are a part of the leadership, or if recent graduates are a part of the leadership, we can ensure that the communication between the alumni and the undergraduate brothers are much better than the way in which we currently function, which is not having any undergrads involved. Um, does anyone have questions about that idea? I know I'm going through a lot on this slide, so I want to
Hey,
give
I
you
don't have
all.
a question per se, but I have a suggestion about the VP for alumni. Um, that's a great idea, and I'm thinking that I know the actives have an alum chair. That could be um, a possibility for that alum chair is to be that VP.
Hmm.
Just something to think about.
The other thing, it's not really a question. I don't know how many of them will want to sit on a board as soon as they graduate and start new jobs straight out of college. Just a note. I didn't have time when we first graduated.
Do you have any other comments, questions?
Yeah, Andrew, uh,
Yeah.
this is Wayne. Um, the main concern I have about your third bullet is treasurers. It's a bit of a hassle to move books from one person to another. and signature cards at banks. They still do things like that with, pencil or pen and paper. And I think for both of these organizations, you would want a treasurer who is planning to be in that position for some period of time because of all of the rules and regulations with the IRS filings and the state of Tennessee filings and dealing with the banks. So I think the other thing we can do is you don't have to limit yourself to president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. You can also have directors. They're not off, they don't have titles, but they're on the board of whatever organization you're talking about. So you could have, upon graduation, former president and VP are asked to serve as directors on the organizations to keep them engaged for some period of time.
So Wayne, this is just a comment to your comment. The reason why I'm using these officers is because they're the ones that are currently defined in our incorporation documents right now. So we would have to add directors I'm not saying it's a bad idea. We would just need to add directors to that, to our functioning constitution and bylaws to make that work out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, although on the Alumni Association, it would not need any updates. The bylaws are written that the board of directors determine how many directors there are.
Okay.
They can change the number of directors on a whim.
So any more questions about that first part? Another thing that I would propose moving forward is that the secretary role for housing and the alumni should just be the same person. Because when you really think about it, we're not going to have two separate email lists or two separate contact lists for everything. It just makes sense to centralize that with one person and have that one person be elected for both positions, for both the housing and the alumni. Does that make sense? I think that's how we should approach that office moving forward. And then another thing, which we haven't done because, as I said, we've depended upon homecoming and being in person to do elections. So our elections have always been from homecoming meeting to the next homecoming meeting. And I would propose that our elections are held for a calendar year, just like the chapter is. So, elections would be in December, and then the offices would be held from January to December of the next year. Um, and that would just be in continuity with also the chapter. So as we're bringing in the president and vice president of the chapter, the undergrads, they're transitioning at the same time that we're transitioning. Um, Now, this is probably the more controversial part of what I'm going to present tonight. But, over the past couple of years, our leadership has kind of fallen out in many regards with the alumni and the housing organizations. And we're kind of lackluster in functioning. And so for the 2026 year, what I would propose is that we have a core group of officers so that we elect a president, a secretary, and treasurer, but that these three officers do the position for both the alumni and the housing, just for this 1 year. And that's just to solidify things, to make decisions easier to carry out. And also just an acknowledgement of we need to build some alumni support first to get more people to volunteer to do things for us, right? I mean, there's a lot of brothers that I've gotten emails from for these past week or so, who said, "Oh, I haven't heard anything in years." And so is someone that hasn't heard anything for years going to dedicate to volunteer to being an officer? Probably not. But hopefully we can kind of instill that and bring on a core group of officers to really settle these matters, get us all set up. Of course, we would bring in two VPs from the undergrads. We have we already have one trained alumni advisor. So Heath, you can check us off there, but hopefully we can get somebody else as well. Because we don't just want to backfall on Heath. And then we also need to consider a new registered agent for both of our organizations. Timothy Holder is our current registered agent. He's a clergy person out in Eastern Tennessee. But as you all know, the floods hit awfully hard in his neck of the woods. Um, and so he would also like to kind of pass that on. Um, and so this would be the idea just for 2026. We would kind of build some alumni support. We're going to do some follow up with communications, which we'll talk about next. And hopefully by the next year, we will shoot for 2 presidents, the 1 secretary, 2 treasurers, the 2 VIPs from the undergrad, and I'd really like us to have 3 trained alumni advisors so that we can have that alumni board by the second year. That would be the ideal. And so, do you have any questions or comments about this kind of 2-year process? Really, it's only a year process, but this kind of 2-year gradual process of stepping in to having a full board.
Andrew, this is Wayne again. I would just make the comment on the registered agent that that individual must reside in the state of Tennessee. And their only duty is anything that the Secretary of State sends or the state corporation sends goes to that person, and then they forward it along to whoever it needs to go to.
Yeah, that is true. So, literally anyone with a resident that is a resident of Tennessee can do that job. Or we could also, there are several businesses that serve as registered agents that, we can pay $50 a year to do that for us. Either way, we just need to make that decision as a group, right? So any questions about that 2-year process or any comments about it?
Hey, Andrew, this is Robert. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. You addressed this a bit on the previous slide, and apologies if it's coming later, and thank you again for putting this together overall. But can you say more on what the status quo is now? I assume it's just housing core in place with a small selection of people. But what is I guess, where are we right now to move into this proposal?
Actually, I'm going to defer it. Heath probably knows better than I about the current state of things.
Yeah, so right now we have the housing court, which has a couple of folks on it right now. Uh, we have the alumni board, which is Wayne and a couple of other guys. Well, actually, one other officer, if I remember correctly, and then just me as the advisory. So that's what we have right now.
Thank you.
But I don't think neither our alumni or our housing is kind of working at full function that it
Yeah,
should be.
yeah.
And that is not unique to us as a chapter. Sadly, that has been more normal in our life as a chapter than probably being organized has. Um, and I think that's one of the issues that we constantly face as a chapter is that we constantly face a lack of alumni engagement after graduation. We kind of have periods of time where alumni become involved and then they kind of fall away. And we have certain alumni classes, I would say, that get super involved at certain time periods and then they kind of fall away. Um, and really consistency is something we need to work on as a chapter. So does that help answer your questions, Robert?
It does. Thank you.
I'll also add to your comment about the trained alumni advisor. So that training itself is really not super intense if you're really concerned about it. It's just watching a series of videos online.
And so, if we have no more questions or comments, I just want to do this final plug that if you would like to serve in any officer positions, please let me know. Um, as I said, we're going to focus on for 2026 on, president, a secretary, and treasurer. And if we can get another alumni to volunteer to be an alumni advisor to join Heath and getting officially trained, that would be a great addition in getting us on the road to next year. So those are kind of the officer positions that we're looking at um, moving forward. And so I want to talk next about communications. One of the things I've already highlighted is that one of the problems about our housing core has been that we've always relied on our homecoming meeting as the end all be all. And as you all know, we can't function that way anymore. That cannot be our primary means of communication. That cannot be our primary means of developing leaders. Really the alumni, the housing core meetings during homecoming became the nose goes competition. Whoever nose goes gets to be president. Um, and we really need to divert away from that and be more intentional about our communications. So some of the things that I'm proposing that we do moving forward, one is that we unify our emails on a platform like MailChimp, where alumni and undergrads have access. And so I can't tell you how many times we have had to compile email lists. I think does someone have my speaker on? Okay. I think every 4 or 5 years, there's probably this mad rush of trying to figure out everybody's emails at some point, and I just went through it again. And so we just need a platform where all of that can be saved, and then it can be passed down to whoever the next people are, so that we're not constantly hunting it every 3 or 4 years. Another thing is consistency about newsletters. We really need 2 newsletters. We need a newsletter for the fall and newsletter for the spring to update everyone about the chapter, talk about the alumni corporation, what we're going to do for homecoming or spring party or what blah blah blah, talk about housing, and then if the advisors have anything where they are asking alumni, hey, we need help on X, Y, and Z with the undergrads, great. But we just really need a formalized newsletter where we know every fall and every spring we're going to, create a mass email that all of us are going to get that gives us all the updates we need. Another thing that I'm going to propose moving forward is that for our leadership, so for our alumni and for our housing core, that we have monthly meetings. So once a month, whoever those officers are, those 4 officers, we will have a meeting, and it will be open to all the brothers. So if you want to come to the meeting and sit in on it, that's great. That way we can also ensure for the undergrads, we can tell the undergrads, hey, second Thursday of the month at 6 p.m., we meet on Zoom. If the toilet's broken at the house, well, you need to jump on that Zoom meeting and let us know. Do you know what I mean? Those type of things. Twice a year, I think we need to have a formal business meeting. And that is so that the alumni or the housing core can really make decisions, particularly financial decisions. We've always kind of jumped from crisis to crisis. And it would be great if we had some longer term planning around finances and around what we spend and what we're doing with our money. And then finally, changing the way we do elections and voting on issues. I'm proposing that we move that online. As I said before, the only way we voted for things in business meetings was at homecoming once a year. And, that is not working for us anymore. I don't think it works for us. I don't think it's working for the undergrads. I think the undergrads feel neglected most of the time because they only get attention once a year. And so we need to be more agile, and we need to be more interactive and be able to have those platforms available for if we need to make some major decisions. If I keep harking on the bathroom, but the bathroom tends to be our worst culprit in the house. Um, but if the shower breaks again and we need to spend $5,000 on a new shower surround, we need to be able to have those business meetings to be able to get those things passed and to be able to respond to our undergrads' needs. Are there any questions, comments, or ideas about communications? And it can also be things that are not on here that you might want to suggest we think about. Lance, I think you're on mute.
I have a comment and a suggestion. Earlier this year, I decided I might like to contribute some money to the House Foundation, but I had no clue how or where to send the money. And I think Heath pointed me in the right direction. And so I wrote a check because I'm old fashioned. I'm going to write checks, and I put it in the mail, and it disappeared. And several weeks later, I called Heath and said, "What do I need to do?" And he gave me a couple of names. I followed up, and then miraculously, it was cashed. And I asked the question. I said, "Well, what is the balance of the House Foundation? How much money is there? Do we have any information about it?" And I think at a minimum, we need to have an accounting, a simple accounting. On January 1 of the past year, this was the balance. Here's what we spent the money on specifically. Here's the money that came in, who contributed it, and what the ending balance is, and what is needed in the future. During the next year, this is what we anticipate we need money for. And maybe in 5 years, it's what we anticipate needing money. People will contribute money if they know what they're contributing money for. But as I mentioned to Heath, I said, I felt like I just mailed a $500 check off to a black hole and really got no acknowledgement of anything other than it did finally get cashed. We need to fix that.
Yeah, I think also another thing kind of in that same category is we really, I love that you're sending checks, but we also really need to have an online platform for people for our so for those of you that don't know, I'm a pastor at a congregation in Manhattan. And I only know two of our members that write checks anymore. Everyone else donates online. Um, and so we also need a platform for our alums that makes it clear, hey, this is where you can donate. And a lot of those platforms give you automatic tax receipts. Like anytime someone donates to my congregation and they scan their QR code, whatever they donate, they automatically get a tax receipt for their donation. And that we can do the same thing where alumni automatically get a letter once they donate saying, hey, thank you for your donation. It's going to go to X, Y, and Z. Thanks.
And I agree that we need multiple ways for folks to contribute. But if we do become a tax exempt organization, and if you're able to make your contribution out of your required minimum distribution, a lot of IRAs only work with checks. So, I mean, that's something to consider.
Yeah, and just to be clear, only the housing core is eligible for that. And we don't have that designation yet. So that would be something we would have to consider and vote upon as a group if we want to pursue that path. Um, but yeah, any other questions or comments about communications? Okay, we will move forward. This is our third topic that we had for tonight. I'm going to reduce this. We're going to talk about the House in general. I know several people have various views on the House and the state that it's in. And this is one way of addressing that. I'm not saying that this is the end all be all um, or that this is the best path for us to go. I'm just saying this is something that we really need to explore. For those of you that don't know, in 2020, Deke Nationals founded the Deke Property Group with income from closing the chapters at Vandy and Ole Miss. So basically, what happened was Vandy was kicked off campus. Ole Miss had been closed. I think Ole Miss has been closed for over a decade now. Um, but what previously happened with the income, so they've been renting Ole Miss out. And then I think the Vanderbilt property is now a sorority is in there. But what previously happened with that income is that it went directly back into the national fraternity. But instead, what Deke decided to do was divert that income into this Deke property group. And so basically, what this Deke Property Group does is it is a housing management corporation for our fraternity chapters that is just for us. They currently, as I said, they own two houses. They own the Vandy and Ole Miss house. They own those full out. And then they also manage or finance three other houses. So these houses are not fully paid for, but they are built and they are currently being managed. One is at Mizzou, Missouri, and then one is at Auburn, and one is at Ohio State. And so basically, what the Deke Property Group does is they build the house in partnership with the chapters. Currently, they're working on partnerships with our chapters at South Carolina, Georgia, and RPI. Now, the way that this works is that they build a plan for a collective house. They look at how much we can support as far as bringing donations in and room remissions in. And then they also go out into basically the investor field and they look for investors to invest in these houses. And just to be honest with you, just like any other uh, corporation, the Deek Property Group, they do make a profit from this. And they do that to support their staff that they have. And they do it to hopefully build future houses. Um, Now, here are some things that we would have to navigate if we wanted to think about going down this route, which is we would have to support the idea of a new house. I know that a lot of us are sentimental to the chapter house. A lot of us are sentimental to where it is on campus. Um, But, the thing about the Deep Property Group is that they'll want a property in a place that makes sense for them financially. So they're going to have to build something bigger than what we currently have or what could fit on the lot that we're on. So I really think when we're talking about if we did talk about looking at a new house, it would also probably mean working with the university to find a new place on campus. I think those two things are right next to each other. Now, one of the things that might be good for us, as far as working with the Deek Property Group, is that while they are, regaining their funds, so it's basically just like taking a long-term loan out, right? And so they are taking the payments out from us and from the room remissions, basically, to pay off the property. What's good about this during this time period is that the Deek Property Group would manage the property during the time period in which they are financing it. So, all of those day-to-day things like the broken toilets or a broken window or the yard is a mess, all of those things would be handled by the Deek Property Group. So the Housing Corps wouldn't have to do any of that anymore. That would be the Deek Property Group would handle all of that, which in some regards, that might be a great thing for us because as alumni, we haven't been all that great at being honest with you about managing the property, but neither have the undergrads. So I think it's a collective fault of us. But here is the other change that I think on the other end that might be a negative impact, which is the Deep Property Management Group would also control the room remissions from the undergrads. So the room remissions currently go to the chapter. And of course, that helps the chapter pay for things like spring party or any kind of socials they're wanting to do, those type of things. But in this system, all of the room remissions or the room costs would go back to the house.
It would be
So the
better if someone
chapter,
else named it anyway.
say that again, Atticus.
Sorry, I didn't know I was on mute.
Oh, okay. So that would be a change in how we currently function. So the chapter would have to, for once, actually have real dues, which as a chapter, we've never really had, we paid the national dues, but we've really depended upon the room remissions to pay for everything else, as far as the undergrads go.
I've got a quick question on that. Just kind of thinking logistically about the campus. If you're talking about building a new chapter house, I mean, part of the problem when we were there was really getting people onto that side of campus was tough. There's so many on fraternity row that are close, but I can't imagine the university is going to let us build anything that's closer than the current house. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if you've had any thoughts or talks on what that would look like and where they would want to build on, but it would have huge implications of how you're able to get kids into the fraternity house, how you're able to, have parties and really recruit kids at all if it's farther than the current house.
That's a good point.
I would say I don't think that we would get on University, but I think if we could get where like Beta and Lambda Chi are, where multicultural, I don't know if that's the multicultural center anymore. I don't know what that building is anymore. Kind of on that, what is that street?
Yeah, where they put the little paper house. Beta doesn't exist over there anymore, but yeah.
Jared, I think you're the one that told me about it, and I don't think we can own
Yeah,
a house at Swanee.
we
One thing we can do, Franklin, I don't know about the university, what we would see if we looked it up, but Franklin County, you are able to see property deeds and acreage and who owns what. So that's one thing we could look at. That's a public forum off Tennessee Gov. So
so at Sewanee, Sewanee technically owns the property. It is only the house that we own. So basically, what we would be doing is asking the university if we can move, basically,
Well,
uh,
I
which
also,
which that is a big ask. I'm not going to deny that, that it would be easy for us to ask the university to move, but I also think that the university has wanted us out of where we are for a long time. I mean, that's why they built that art center in the back, was because they wanted to move stuff on campus that way.
if I remember correctly, like junior or senior year, they were talking about nothing else would be added to University Avenue. So I definitely know we aren't getting on there.
Well, yeah, University
Remember they were
Avenue.
trying to remove all the cars and everything? Like they wanted nothing on that street at all.
I think the
University
point,
Avenue
we're
would
definitely
be,
never going to add you there as long as I think just if you're going to commit to it, you just need to know if it's off campus remotely, they'll have zero pledges. That was really kind of my point. I think the house definitely could use some love. Even with the renovations they did, I mean, it's looks like it's from 1960. And when I was there, no one wanted to live on campus. So, or in the house, like it was almost like someone had to do it. So we did it. Um, but I think that's something you should really consider when you go in to look at it is where they're going to place us. If they're going to give us a spot to use, that's good. But if they're not, you're going to run into a whole boatload of rush issues and it will kind of collapse from there.
What about the old ATO house that's on University Avenue?
Zero chance they'll give that up. They wanted ATO out of there for years and it's always going to be shut down. But maybe
I remember from 2009, they were talking about they were having foundational issues in the house, anyways. Like the university wanted to tear it down.
Do we know the last instance like a fraternity moved around campus to a different house or got like some new build construction or permission? Because as far as I remember, I can only think of fraternities like losing their houses or losing access.
What was Zach Smith's fraternity, Jared? The one right up the corner. I don't remember what it was called.
Gamma.
so
Yeah,
that was Gamma.
Well, that was more like those sorority houses, and
Well,
those get kicked
yeah,
around all the
Yeah, but
time.
that's where they put them. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the sororities move around a whole lot more than the fraternities do.
Yeah,
Um,
that was
but the thing about it is right now is that the university has Beta that is sitting empty, and the university doesn't want that house. And if we could, of course, we're gonna have to bulldoze it for them, but I mean, that's in a frat area, I would say.
no,
It
that's
is on the
if they could get that, that's the perfect spot. I mean, it'll get shut down more for parties and stuff, but I mean, that would be a much more advantageous spot for them to rush and bring kids over and you have this nice new house. That spot would be great.
And there's also a lot of wood. I mean, campus is slowly encroaching that way, but there's still a lot of wooded area around there and enough separation from, you know, the central campus.
and the isn't that where the chapter originally was, like over there somewhere?
So we were across the street
Got it.
where
Yeah,
it was
multicultural.
it was called Multicultural Center when like Jared and I were there, but I don't know Jared, what is it called now? Do you know what it's called now?
Their guess is as good as mine.
Oh, okay.
I think there's multicultural and there's the print services building across the way.
Okay.
Now,
Correct.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it was when I was there. It was vacant, and so we took it over. And then we moved, I think, to the Sterling Coffee House or a house next door to it while we built the new house.
And so, you
The
know,
multicultural center is still the multicultural center according to the.
oh, okay.
And are they going to
Looking
give a
in the
quote
right spot.
of, what that price range is going to be? Because I think that's the other thing. I mean, when I was there, at least a lot of the guys who weren't SAE, they paid whatever they went on the formals. A lot of the kids came from a ton of money. A lot of deep was more like the country guys that didn't. So if you raise dues, that might also run in. I mean, we helped guys with dues when we were there. That's just what we did to make sure we
Well,
got. So
Chris, I think the question actually, and we're going to have to discuss this with the university about feasibility. It comes down to how many room remissions we can actually get in a house. If we can get 6 guys in there like SAE did, like we could probably finance something in a decade. And then after that, we would own the house. But if we're looking at like only having 2 guys, I don't think Deep Property Group would even take a
No.
second look at us for 2 guys.
Yeah, and
We're
I
gonna
don't think you want to rebuild the house for 2 guys either, right? Like that doesn't make much sense to knock down something that was part of the problem, that there isn't good living area over there. So you got to make it more with.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And I think another thing, a way in which we can pitch it to the university is that Sewanee is growing. There are going to have to be newer houses and better houses than what Sewanee has had before. And we can present the university with a solid plan backed up by our national fraternity saying, hey, here's a plan for a redevelopment of a house, and this is what it's going to look like. I really think the university, well, I think Rob Perrigan, who's in charge, the vice chancellor right now, I think he would be behind it. He's a Greek alum. He's one of our alums. I think he would like to see Greek life move along. But we're going to have to really present to the university, okay, we're going to make something newer and not bigger because SAE still has 6 people, I think, but something comparable to that.
I'm looking at the campus map on the website right now, and what was that house next to Theta Pi? It looks like it's empty now.
They have something in there.
Okay.
They moved. I think PKE. I was on campus like over the summer. It looked like PKE got moved back from the morgue back over to Sportsman House. It was Sportsman House, and now it's I think it's PK. I could ask my wife. She was PK. I think she'll probably remember. But there's no empty space right there. Those are.
Yeah, I was just looking around the
assuming like there is a property identified that's in a better position than the current house, and the university would somehow be willing to relinquish, like who makes the pitch to the university? Is that like the Deep Property Group comes in and does that like they did on the other campuses, or is that something they partner with our alumni group?
So it would be us because we are the only ones that can legally own a house. So we would be co-owners with the Deep Property Group because of university regulations. And so we have to be the ones to present to the university. Now, if we get to the point of making that pitch, of course, we're probably going to have someone from the Deep Property Group there with us, backing us up. But ultimately, the university has to hear from us because we're the only ones that the university can be accountable to and with, if that makes sense.
And I was late, so I apologize if this is a question that was already covered. If they rebuild it, I know, obviously Katie's kind of a bad example, but it was built up. It looked great. Katy has a lot of rules that they can't do stuff in it. Would it, is there going to be any regulation because it's owned by somebody else of what the parties look like, how they, because what I worry happens is college kids are idiots. Like they punch holes in walls, they flip tables, they're consistently dumb. I love my friends, but it was insane. It was like trying to herd cats. Like it was like no one cared. So when something happens, because it will, how does that process work? Is it going to be more regulated? Is it going to, put more stress and on the kids, or is it something that's kind of just expected?
So I have only had experience with Auburn, because I was one of the founders of that chapter, and helped started that chapter. And so I actually helped them get into their house. They literally built, well, the university built the house with them. Um, and that's also something that we can talk about because, at Auburn has to own I think it's like 25% of the house. So all of the houses at Auburn, the university has some buy-in into the house itself.
It's because they're a land
Um,
grant college.
and so, Auburn actually pitched in to help build that house. Now, what came with that was that the housing regulations in the rooms went along with it. So like you can't smoke pot in your room, right? Like that, like those type of standard housing things that you see in the dorms took place in the rooms themselves, but the common room didn't have those regulations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, at 20, if they walked upstairs and there was weed, and I mean, kids got in trouble for that all the time.
Now, now
Yeah.
would I imagine in our instance, I don't think Sewanee would want to invest in our property. So that's the first thing. Um, they would stay away from that. And then two, Sewanee traditionally hasn't been heavy on regulating what life is like in the rooms of the fraternity houses. And so I think what would have to be mediated is between us and the Deke Property Group. And I'm pretty sure the Deke Property Group has some rules themselves about, okay, this is how we expect you to treat the property because we don't want to have to be sending a repair guy up here every other week to repair a punched hole in the wall, right? But the Deke Property Group does do that. So they have repairmen, they have their own system of people that go and fix the houses and they figure all that out for us. Or
Uh,
well, I should say they figure it out for us while they are financing our property.
And I guess they finance properties for college kids everywhere. So I gotta imagine that all the college stuff is happening at every college, not just Swanee.
Now that is the kicker, I will say, is that after we pay them what the value of the house is back, we become managers of the house again. So let's say it takes us 15 years to pay the house off. Well, after those 15 years, then we have to take over all that management stuff that we've assumed that they've been doing all that time. And we just kind of have to keep that in the back of our heads. Um, Now we can hire after we're done with this process, we of course can hire a fraternity management company. I mean, I can tell you, I have experience at Auburn. We had to do that at Auburn. Um, but um, but yeah, that would be something that we have to just think about. It's something to think about. But they do take care of all of the property management while the house is being financed through them.
I mean,
And
I feel like
so,
that's doable, though. Like, I mean, and to be honest, in 15 years, a lot, at least the guys I know, I graduated in 2019, a lot of them do really well. but they also have, having kids and starting a family. And it's not really a time that you go donate back to your fraternity. It's more like, hey, we're getting our life started. Um, so getting those, you have quite a bit of time to come up with a plan to get people more excited. It is tough to get back, but finding a way to actually reach out to the alumni in a way that is going to be meaningful, I think is what needs to happen, because it's not. I loved it. I graduated with Rob down there. Like we loved it. But at the same time, that kind of connection isn't there. We're still in a fantasy football league with 12 of us, and have a good time, but it's not like we're like, oh man, we have to go back to the house, and you need to find a way to cultivate that excitement again. And you can get all the money you need, but it's going to take some effort and thought of how you make that happen. But I think that's definitely plausible to have guys get more involved, I would say.
And so, basically, to kind of help wrap this up, what you all will be voting on is moving forward with exploring this idea. So, reaching out to Deep Property Group to see what their interest is in it, reaching out to the university, seeing where we can, would they consider swapping property, all that type of stuff, and kind of we wouldn't be voting on are we going to do it? We're just voting on the officers for next year exploring this possibility, right? So does that make sense to everybody? And so that is it for tonight. I know I kind of tried to keep myself, I was like, I really want to keep this meeting to under an hour. I didn't keep that promise. We're about 12 minutes over. But are there any final comments or thoughts for the good of the order?
You
I
go.
have one, and that is we need to do something. A couple of years ago, we had the gathering of the 50th anniversary of the founding of the chapter, and the house was in such bad shape that nobody went to it. All of the events that we had were not at the house, and most of the folks that came back did not even go and look at it. So
I
Jared,
was
did
there
you have
at that
something?
time, so it definitely was bad. I mean, the thing is, there was just $0 at that time either. There was just like the budget was so small that there was, even if we wanted to fix the house, we would ask, and we couldn't fix the house every year. Like the beams were broken. They probably still are broken, like going across the top of the house, and people are still walking on them. But I mean, it was tough sledding out there.
yeah. But I know we have $27,000 in the account because I asked three or
Yeah,
four times and finally got an answer. But I have no clue what needs to be done this year, how much money needs to be raised, what's the address to mail the check to. Um, that basic information needs to be out there, and that doesn't require anything other than just communication. Just tell us what's needed and how to remit the money.
Is there possibility of us setting up like a, what's that thing called, Chime or something? I'm talking about the online bank.
Well, there are several like nonprofit donation apps that we can use to kind of streamline our donation process. Um, I mean, as you all know, most of the ones I know are kind of church focused or in those regards, but there's also ones for fraternities. And that can be something that the officers for this next year can look into and kind of address some of those issues that you're bringing up, Lance.
We also we have an alumni year after me and Chris, who was president. His family runs like their business is advising nonprofits on strategy and fundraising and organization and such. So I feel like that would be a pretty logical contact.
Yeah, Robert, you have my email. If you could like copy me in an email and kind of introduce, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure.
Any other comments, suggestions before we end tonight?
Thanks for hosting this.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks.
doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So the plan is I will wrap this recording up. I will send the recording out on the email so that alumni that weren't here can have a chance to watch this. And probably, I'm going to say the 24th, I'm going to send out an email with a survey monkey that will allow you all to vote on the things that we talked about tonight. And also for those of you that tuned in late, you can watch the recording and see what we talked about earlier in the meeting. But we'll move forward. And of course, if you want to be an officer of any type, please email me. Let me know so that we can get those positions filled. So remember, what we're looking for is a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. We're looking for an additional alumni advisor as well. So those are the positions that we're looking for the 2026 year. So if any of
Well,
you all,
are we
yeah.
rolling all the positions over in 2026, or are we going to prioritize them? Because I know some of those positions are desperately wanting to be refilled.
Oh, you mean you're talking about Parker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is the hope is that we have a new treasurer. So that is the hope that
All right.
someone will step forward. But also, if you know brothers that would be great for these positions and they're not on this meeting or you haven't seen them on the Facebook, just email them, copy me in the email, let me know that, you think they would be great leaders and they just need to be reached out to. And we'll just move forward from here. But on the 24th, I'll send out that survey monkey so that you all can vote on these things and we can move forward for the 2026 year. Okay?
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, see y'all.
All right. Thank you so much.